America, your sorrows are profound, your blood-stained and sacred ground, your purple mountain majesty, divide us from sea to sea.
Something else I've kind of been thinking about is we talked about who this is for. Even for our white audiences, there's some things that we've done to this piece around language, around putting it in your living rooms. Garrett, you said something really great about opera, and the only thing I really knew about opera is that a good opera is in Italian and German and not English. That's the only kind of tropic thing I had heard. Could you dive into that more?
Yeah, I think when we talk about more generally increasing diversity in audiences and even who we see on stage, we have to accept the change in the general aesthetic. I think there's an aesthetic of foreign language art song that people are really used to when they think about the word opera. But as I mentioned yesterday, there are examples all over the repertoire of composers who believe that certain pieces of music should be performed in the language of the people, as you'll often see. The Magic Flute by Mozart is a great example of that. And actually, I believe the Fledermaus is another example of the times I've performed it. Not all of them have been in English, but a couple of them were. So I think that sound aesthetic is a small, very granular example of what we need to be open to when we talk about really busting open opera, busting open the arts, and applying them to activism. How do we go even further? Maybe adding beats and 808s, maybe really centering new opera and the opera of new composers and living composers. Maybe even inserting songs like these, renditions of songs like these in performances that are happening. We talk about yesterday, we were talking about the difference between an ally and an accomplice. Maybe an ally would have written this piece of music and created the imagery that we saw earlier. Maybe an accomplice, when the world opens back up and a company is performing Deflator Mouse, maybe an accomplice will perform this version instead of what was originally written, and face the equal reward and benefit from raising awareness, but also the same risk as Steve was speaking to. So I think all of those things have to be considered when we talk about the general aesthetics that have to change in diversifying opera, and changing language is a very, 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 very small part of that change in aesthetic, but a really important one, and one that can definitely have a huge impact when we talk about exposing new audiences to this sort of thing.
I've heard someone describe allyship being an accomplice as it costing you something, that it is performative allyship if you declare your values and then you don't have to do anything beyond that. And I think what you're saying is this is something that you build upon. There is a next step. This call to action is not finished in some way.
Because what has it cost people of color? Again, let's think about some of the images we saw in that in that project. People died, people went hungry, people were homeless. Even today, there's so much happening that that costs people of color, just to exist. There is a cost for that when you live in a white supremacist country under a white supremacist leader within an arts infrastructure that has historically centered Western Europe. So there is a cost there for people of color. When we talk about being an accomplice, when I talk about that anyway, I talk about taking on some of that cost. Maybe something you say in allyship to me will cost you someone's trust or cost you an opportunity. That's really the crux of what we're talking about when I say the differences between being an ally and being an accomplice, is taking on the cost that people of color pay for just existing.